This is Premiere Pro 2025 version 25.5 that just came out, and I have been extremely resistant to update to 2025. Actually, I've been editing in 24.6.3, which is the update before what I would consider one of the worst UI changes I've ever seen in a software, but we'll get into that more in a second. First, I want to talk about why I reluctantly did update to 25.5, and that's actually pretty exciting. So I got this email today from Film Impact, which is by far my most used plugin. I pretty much only use Film Impact transitions in my projects, and now Film Impact is integrated fully into Adobe Premiere without any cost. So I have an opportunity to save myself $30 a month, which is great. And I only have until November of 2026 at the absolute latest before I have to reluctantly switch to the new Premiere anyway. So I figured I might as well check it out. And as you might imagine, I have some thoughts. This is not my first time trying Premiere Pro 2025. When it first came out, I downloaded it. And then like a month or two ago, I also downloaded it and did a full project in it to see how terrible it really was. And I definitely have some things to talk about. Let's start with something kind of nice though, and that is this change to the audio waveform. Previously in Premiere 2024, if I mute a section, this is how I censor curse words in a lot of projects, you can see that the waveform stays there. And in the new version, it actually shows you exactly what you're doing to the waveform, which is a very welcome change. This is something I really liked when I tried DaVinci a while back, and I'm glad to see it here because it removes a lot of the trial and error of finding where the curse word is and what exactly you're doing to the audio. I don't even have to listen to this to know what it's doing. And that's pretty much where my good things end so far. Obviously, having Film Impact fully integrated is going to be a nice addition, but it's going to function exactly the same as I'm used to. So let's get into some gripes. The first one, and the main one, being the FX change. So not only did they move it from the beginning of the clip to the end of the clip, but they've also made it a lot more subtle and less informative. It's now, as far as I'm aware, just a one-stop shop if it has effects or does not have effects on the clip. Versus in the old version, you had a yellow indicator, a purple indicator, and there's also a green indicator to kind of tell you how many effects are applied and a little bit of information about what types of effects are applied. I'm okay with the one-stop shop. It's a little annoying because it's a lot easier for me to search for a purple clip where it has effects that I know I want to copy, for instance. But I think the biggest thing, on top of it moving to the back of the clip that makes it a little more annoying to search for, is just how subtle it is. It is very hard to tell the difference here. I don't even know how much I want to touch on other UI changes in general. The program is much darker than it was. The timeline looks completely different. They've rounded all the corners. I really, really like my sharp edges. It makes me feel a lot more certain where a frame ends, where a clip ends, and I just like the boxy feel of it versus everything being rounded now in the timeline. But that's something I will get used to. I think the biggest thing timeline wise with the UI change is the inversion of the label colors. So as you can see here in 24, this is my label color, this mango, and that is the same color as the audio waveform, and then we have a darker color as the background. And now the label color carries through to the background of the waveform, and the waveform is darker. This is also something I will likely get used to, but it doesn't make it not annoying. One other addition to the waveform that is actually nice is that this also works. When you increase the volume, it also changes the waveforms, which is a good addition. But speaking of the height of the waveforms are also just way smaller than they used to be. They come up about 3/4 or even more on the waveform in 24, and it's like exactly halfway for both channels in 2025. So that's a bit disappointing. It's definitely a little harder to see exactly what's happening, and at least so far a little hard to tell the volume of things. I have a really good indication of the volume of things in 24, and that's probably also something I will just get used to. And then we get into some of the workflow stuff that is a little bit annoying. Still something I will likely get used to, but I just don't know why they made the change they did. So now when you select a clip, you have a new box here called Toggle Direct Manipulation, and this is the same as clicking something like position in Premiere 24. So if I click on a clip, go to that clip and click position, now I have handles where I can manipulate the clip. And then as soon as I click off of that, it's gone. In Premiere 25, even if I don't toggle this on, if all I do is click up here, it automatically toggles it on. And as soon as this is on, if I do anything on the timeline and click, it pauses playback. Versus in 2024, obviously there's no toggle. I have to click motion or position or whatever to activate these handles, and as soon as I click off or even start playing the timeline, they're gone. If I am playing back and click one of these, it pauses playback, but I can still click clips, do other things to clips while playback is going, and that's something I actually do a lot. In 2025, for this to work, I have to constantly toggle this back off. Now, with it toggled off, I can do the same sort of manipulation elsewhere in the timeline while I'm working. And like with all these other changes, I probably will get used to it, but it is annoying as hell. I want to actually look. I'll look right now if there's a way to toggle this. Toggle transform. Okay, so at least there is a toggle that you can apply a shortcut to. So I will be adding a shortcut to that. That'll make it a little easier, but it won't necessarily make it less annoying, because I do constantly go into this and I'm going to forget that it toggles it on and then keep working and try to click something or cut something or whatever it may be, and it's not going to work. Initially, when I first tried 2025, I thought it was just period. If you click literally any clip, it pauses playback. But luckily, there is a toggle where it'll function much more like the older version. Another thing I like seeing is that crop is now fully integrated into motion. You don't have to add a crop effect to crop. However, you do have to toggle this to crop to be able to have the handles for crop. Versus in 2024 version, I have to add a crop, but as soon as I add a crop, I can just click the crop and I get the handles. Again, small fish, doesn't really matter, but does kind of change current workflow, and it's something that I'll have to get used to. Other than that, Premiere is running pretty well. It's running a bit better than 2025 was for me initially. We'll see if it fixes any of my random export issues or anything like that, but overall I just don't understand why they completely reworked the UI. I really genuinely like the old UI, and it feels much more robust and much more mechanical than much more like an app. And that's just my preference. It seems like most people actually don't care, which I was kind of surprised by with how big of a change it is. And I know that you can technically get the labels looking a little better, but overall I'm really disappointed, I guess, with how high contrast everything is in the timeline now. It's much more bright feeling, which is kind of weird because the general UI background and everything is actually darker. But I think with that change, in addition to the change where the timeline is now much brighter because they're using an opposite inverse waveform layout, just makes things much higher contrast and overall appear much brighter. It also seems like they made this whole section of the UI a bit chunkier, especially the zoom bar is like freaking huge now, and I don't understand why. It does not need to be this big at all. They definitely added a gap here between the zoom bar and the UI. And so that's like some good real estate there being lost. There's much more space in general in this section of the UI, which is kind of a bummer. My player is visibly smaller in the same layout of the UI. And it's just things like that that I just genuinely don't understand why they did it. If you're currently using Premiere 25 or just updated to 25.5, or if you're like I have been and you're resisting it with everything you have, let me know in the comments. I would love to get a conversation going about this. I think it's a bigger deal than I'm hearing about in the sphere that I'm in. It seems like most people have just updated because it's the new version and you update to the new version, and I have been completely against that. I really genuinely prefer the old UI. I'm sure I'll get used to it, but I don't think I'll ever like it like I liked the old UI. In general, it does feel pretty snappy, pretty responsive. I haven't had any issues yet. I haven't been working in it very long, but I just wanted to get this quick video out to share the exciting news that something like Film Impact is now fully accessible to anybody using Creative Cloud, which is really cool. Talk about some of the things I don't love so much about 2025.